Hey everyone, welcome back. Sorry it's been so long. I've been busy, like really busy. I am going to go through that. So today's stream will be 3 parts. Do an update on what I've been up to, and then um, the upcoming videos and things like that. I should be back on track. And then the actual sort of concept of this video, we're going to do like an animation blend. It's a little different than what you might see, and we'll kind of talk about some other examples you could do and why you may want to use this version versus those versions, or implementations versus those implementations. And then we'll go through an actual animation. So that last part will be longer. So if you're just watching this on YouTube, you can just get that part if you're not interested. But it'll be fun in its own way. So yeah. About the delay, one of the major things that happened is I moved to Minneapolis. It's super beautiful here. I love it. So that's been good. At the same time, I actually worked for Lab Zero. And if you're familiar with, I was just contracting, and I had started right near the end there, unfortunately. But everyone there is really wonderful. But right when that happened, I also got in touch through a great friend for the folks to the folks at Main Six, and they developed Them's Fighting Herds, and so I've been working on that game, which is just amazing. Everyone there's really fun and really talented, and I mean I've been in workplaces where I get along with everyone, but being in a workplace where everyone has the same vision and drive and passion and is really funny and fun and nice. It's like really cool. So that's just been amazing. Cool stuff coming with that, but I can't speak on behalf of the company really, or I'm not trying to. I guess is what I say. Um, that's just what I've been up to. That's why I've been so busy, just trying to get a schedule set up um, that works for all the stuff I've been up to. Let's see if we have any chatters. Not yet. Yeah, so today's video is gonna be what I do for an animation blend, and specifically for Kate's aiming animations, like with her gun. Um, so some of her stuff is pretty basic. She just pulls it out, fires, then rapid fire like that. I need to fix that animation like that. But if we want to start fighting some folks, and let's say we have, oops, isn't going as smoothly as I thought. I want to be able to aim. Ooh, I overheated. Well, this is going horribly. It's not a video that I've made if it's not horrible in the beginning, so just do this. Here, you can do, a standard shot you might expect, but she can also aim below her like this. Shot of it here. As she falls, her aiming corrects. I thought that would launch him up better. And so we're just gonna do an implementation for that. But we also have these sort of more dynamic shots like that, where she does like a cool pose. And she also corrects her aiming for that. This implementation is kind of brute forcey, but the results are like really good. So that's why I like it. You can get away with things where you like just offset their torso or maybe just their arm. But depending on the pose, it might look great if you just do the torso, but another pose, it looks silly, like if they're aiming up and they lean their whole torso back. And so you'll want to do their arm more. And you could do an implementation where you sort of blend between the torso and the arm and shoulders, and have your own little sort of blend system set up. But we're gonna do some pretty wild poses, and it looks really good if we sort of brute force it. And brute force is strong. It's technically what we're doing, but we're just going to be sort of reusing a lot of animation, sort of. I'll show you how you do it to get some really great results. So excited to watch. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so the basic gist of it is that we have two sort of functions that we do. This set aim vector. The aim vector in this case is actually just an offset from your position to your target position, and if you don't know how to do that, you just subtract them. I have like a method set up here, but it's because I use it so much. It's their position minus your position, and that gives you the offset. And depending on other things you're doing, you may need to normalize it, things like that. But what we do basically is we kind of need two axes to align to reach the character. We need to do the z-axis, like lateral along the ground like this, to aim at the target, and then we need to do the up and down, the x-axis. And so we cheat a little, and we just face the target. So this is already, covered in other videos. How to, use that target offset and just sort of look at them, our Z rotation. But then we need an X rotation. And so in there, we just do an animation blend. So if you don't know, in an animator, double click here in our animator, create state. We'll actually create one because later in the day, we want to do some new ones. I'll actually just probably copy these over, but just to show how to do it. And I messed up already, so you want to right click, create state from new blend tree. And then you double click on that, do your blending and stuff. Or excuse me, add your motions. And it's going to be based on aim direction. That's what and then motion fields here. You'll notice that you can do blend trees within. And so when I was first doing this, I tried doing it so she could shoot to the side as well. You would still need some correct. I tried doing it like 360 degrees. And it would have been tight, because she's shooting like behind her back and things like that. Just some of the blends, because you can think of it like it's like a sphere, and getting all those like sort of in position so they blend well, it ends up getting out of hand. You might think you might only need like up, down, left, right, forward, and back. Normally you kind of only need that like for going up and down, but once you start getting like these like extra axes, it's like it kind of explodes in how many animations you have to do. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work. If you have the time, like it can be so dope. Like at first it was sick, like it was really cool, but it just got out of hand because I had lots of different skills that needed to be in the game. But anyway, we're just gonna do motion fields. I like to do 0, 1, just typical 0% to 100%. And then we'll add the motions here when we get them. And this is more what it looks like. We're actually going to do this sort of different pose where she, spins around all cool and then fires her gun. It looks really dope when we're doing different targets, and she does a different pose like each time. So when there's lots of targets, in here quickly, she does all these cool shots. That's super sick. So, notice that she tracked the enemy as it went up. So basically, we just need this other value to blend between. So when she's in the middle of that shot, if you can see over here, the middle of that animation, 0 is down, mid is up. Or, excuse me, mid is up. 0.5 is mid and 1 is up. And yeah, so how do we get that? Well, it's pretty simple. There's a built-in, where did that go? Method in Unity that lets us get that. That's vector3.angle. This is a little imperfect. It just requires a little bit of I'm not quite sure, like getting it more perfect. I don't know what to say. But in my game, it works. It covers all. I don't know how to phrase this right. This isn't going to be like the exact angle. It is the exact angle. It's just a little bit off because of some stuff that I do here. I use this aim vector, so it's like, it's hard to explain. But basically, it's because it's a vector3 angle. And so it's not on one axis. It's not doing like just a perfect up and down. There's a little bit of error there. It works for me in this game, and like in gameplay wise, there's no errors. But if you're doing something more specific, you would need to sort of get these angles more axis aligned. So like the vector3.angle, it takes a character transform dot up and then the aim vector. And so, it starts it up and then we divide by 180 because it gets it in degrees. And this function is never more than 180. If it's more, it'll go like the other direction, if that makes sense. So, it's like if you have two vectors, I'm not explaining this very well. I hadn't planned on it because it's like a built-in function. So, but basically, we're already sort of flattening out the vector. We look at them first. And so then it's just, we get the z by doing this, and then we get the x by just using this method. Basically, it takes, straight up from the character to wherever we want to aim and gets an angle based on that. Then we divide by 180, so it's 0 to 1, range. I forget like what the term is there. We just blend that. So that's about it. To recap, we do this because it looks great. It's a little brute forcey, so it's going to be a lot of extra work, but it looks great. Some of the more simpler implementations where you have sort of maybe some IKs even, or even just something simple where you correct after the animation update, you go in and correct the torso and arms, their rotation to aim at the target, which is something you can do, but it looks bad in a lot of times. But it can be good. Like if you have some simple animations, like if she's always, holding her gun like a rifle or something, always aiming down, like based on her shoulder and things like that, it can look good. But she's doing some wild stuff, so we want to do it this way. Another thing, just sort of a side note, when we fire the projectile, we'll get into that when we get back to the character action tutorial. Oh yeah, I meant to mention that in the beginning. Like that's the next video we're gonna get back into that. I got a bunch of videos lined up, back on track with that. So, and I'll cover it in more detail when we get to like guns and stuff. But lining all this up, we have this character, and if you have like custom weapons and like you want the animation to like line up perfectly, and we'll do our best in here. You can see her aim, like the gun isn't exactly aiming like perfectly straight. And so, you can correct that with the trajectory of the bullet, but it's not going to line up with the muzzle perfectly. So there's a few ways you can hide it. In Astral Chain, the bullets kind of like fade in. They're not like here yet. And it looks really good because they have some poses that look like this. Like, I don't know, I haven't played it yet. It's like a game I'm dying to play. But like they just fade in the bullets, so it doesn't have to be lined up. It just basically lines up. So, and you can hide it with the muzzle flare, the muzzle flash. Um, you can make it sort of exit the barrel accurately and then sort of cheat it and let the bullet sort of fix its trajectory, correct its trajectory. There's a lot of things you can do. And the point of this is that if you do hacky, weird stuff that isn't perfect, that's perfectly fine because, you know, Platinum thinks it's okay to do it, so you should feel it's okay to do it in your action games. Same, have you ever tried use procedural IK? I did. She had an animation where, hi there, good timing, projectiles being next, sweet. She had an actual, like, real animation blend before. I don't have it set up anymore, unfortunately. But while she was running, we just had, or I just had a IK on her arm, and no matter how she was running, she would aim like front behind, like over her shoulder and stuff like that. And it looked really dope. It was a little wonky, but mechanically, this just ended up being funner. We just kept it with this stuff. So yeah, just to recap, you know, you want to use, in this implementation, you know, we face target. So we find out target offset, it's your target and yourself. Look at the exact implementation here, but here it is. So end minus start. So their position minus your position. And if you ever need to reverse that, you just like multiply the z by negative, which can be weird, I guess, if you're in actual full 3D space. But and so once you have that, please on. What? Oh. Once you have that offset, we zero out the y. So that way we're just getting sort of a lateral rotation. And we set the character transform rotation to that. And we do a bit of an ease. I use quaternion ease. So we can just ease into it if we wanted. Yeah, and so that'll give us our lateral or Z, like if we're swiveling in our chair. And then if we, you know, our up-down aim with for our gun, simply do vector3.angle. So again, this is pretty close. And depending on how you set it up, it will be exact. But this angle can be a little bit wrong if you're doing like scientific type stuff. If this stuff isn't perfect. So this is basically, if you can think about it, it's like if we squished the x-axis, or like, how do I say this? Like if we were a sphere and we squished along the x-axis to make a disk that's facing up and down. And so now we just, even though it's a vector 3, it's just, you know, one, that makes it axis aligned. I'm explaining this horribly, but it works. So just trust me. Yeah, and then we divide by 180. And then in our actual blend, you know, I personally set it up so 0 is down, 0.5 is the middle, and 1 is up. Excuse me, just set my blend. Oh. Alrighty. Quick. Destroyer, you said same. Oh, maybe you meant same as the chatter. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. If you're watching on YouTube, that's about it. This was just a quick video to show something before we get really back into it, and because I had been gone so long. But now we'll do a little animation. So for Kate's probably sure shot, I guess to reveal some mechanics about the game, you can mark weak points on enemies. It's kind of like a context attack, but you can kind of like stack up contexts on enemies, and it lets you do that and a bunch of other cool stuff, and it's really fun. But she can do it in the air, and all these are from the ground. This move gets used a lot because you can like mark a ton of enemies and then start firing like crazy, like I showed. So it's worth it to do like so many. So with 4 attacks, it's 12 animations. It isn't that bad because we're going to be copying over. It's like we don't have to design the animation. We don't have to design the timing. In fact, we need to keep that all the same so it lines up well. Sip, and I haven't spoken in a while. Well, that's not true. I guess I've been on Zoom calls a lot, but my voice gives out easily anyway. So it's worth it to do this a little bit extra work for it. So in the air, we want some even wilder animations. So here, you know, she's like sliding in, and in the context of the game, like blending from other animations, it makes her look like more of a spin. Especially when you're like changing directions, because with this ease here, with this face target, I ease into it. So when she does it, her back can already be turned to the enemy. Say the enemy, maybe like, I don't know, like over here or something. And she'll spin, but she's also easing to face the target, so this will spin even more, and it just looks really good. So to show off how we do it, I would, you know, design this animation. It's pretty simple. This blend right here is bad. I'm going to be fixing that up for all of them. But the gist of it is, you know, I want a little more animation theory. And one of our next videos, not the very next one, we'll talk about like designing attacks. I've done a couple, but they're not great. And I think it's good to just show different sorts of animation types. And the different sort of principles that might be more important than in others. So for this one, you know, my sense is like, you know, you're watching an action movie and, you know, the enemy comes up behind him and it's like, what's a sick way to like fire your gun? One that I haven't done for her that I want to do is like, you know, like in the beginning of Parks and Rec, her Ron Swanson like shoots a gun under his arm like that, like the cowboy shot, like something cool like that. And so we start with that, sort of like the pose, like where we're coming from. On this one, you know, she's coming, you know, from down here. On this one, she's coming from the side, so she spins around like that. That looks sick. And this one, you know, she's coming from the other side, so it's similar pose, but it's a different rotation. And we have her like come over the top instead. That one's almost like a little bit cowboy. I could fix that a little bit. Her arm, I don't know. Maybe she's leaning back a little bit too much. It still looks tight. And this one kind of similar, but she starts real low, comes up, leans back, boom. And so when we're designing, you know, we kind of, for this particular skill, I want like the start point here, and then also a pose that looks sick. You know, that looks dope. And, you know, just over iterating on this skill, you know, this many frames looked good. And then I have her hold the frame just a little bit, but, you know, we don't hold it static. We always want to, you know, this is basically how I do it. Delete that. If we do just like a full soft blend here, you know, that doesn't look quite good. What we want to do is go back a couple frames, copy that, or we can just do insert, and then grab, pull it back a bit. So that way, she's basically reached her destination, but then there's a little bit of a blend there. Whoop. Because you never want to just like totally static. She's basically reached there. And there's things you can do that are a little bit better than that. Like you may want her to even maybe go past the target and sort of correct her aiming a bit. So other little sort of natural tremors of the body, there's a lot of things you could do. But that's a really fast and easy way that always looks good. Make sure that she, you know, it creates anticipation, but there's still motion. And then from there, just pull it back. The gun fires, pulls in, it pulls her whole body. Depending on the animation, you may not want her hips to like come back yet. So it's like boom, boom, the gun hits, fires, kicks, then it knocks her back. In this animation, it didn't look as good. In others, I would stick with it. You can see the gun kicks a little bit earlier, and it is a little more like realistic. I didn't like it. Although right now I'm looking at it and I'm like, that looks kind of good. But because we're making so many, how it shows up in the game, it's really, really not noticeable. If you're making a fighting game and you have like a really good shot of the character every time, of course you want to go a little extra. So I do the kick. A thing to note, and despite growing up in Wyoming, I don't have a lot of experience with firearms, but something I see in animation a lot that looks really bad. And I hate to like put a game on blast because this game has really great graphics otherwise, and that's one step from Eden. But they have this character that has a big cannon. I think it's the only dude. I feel bad if they're all girls and I'm getting it wrong, but they have this basic shot where they fire their rifle and they do this smear that's like from here to here. Because she's like holding the rifle, like, with two hands, but maybe like a little bit lower than like straight up at the shoulder. And so she fires, and the kick makes the whole barrel come up. She's holding like this big rifle. Makes the whole barrel come up like this. But they put a smear right here, and it looks very bad. I'm just going to say it. And I've seen it in a lot of places. They'll do it like with just the gun, where they like go like this, and maybe rotate this up a little bit, and they create a smear right here. A, it's wrong. B, it doesn't convey what we're trying to convey. And even if A was right, even if it was actually accurate of like the real motion of the gun, it doesn't convey the feeling that we want. And the feeling that it conveys, I wish I could show the animation, I didn't think about it till now, is that we're sort of like swiping the gun, almost like she's like pulling the gun up and away, or almost like slashing with the gun. And that's not what we want at all. What happens is that, there's like an explosion here, and you're trying to, hold on to the gun. It generally kicks back. That's not the exact like science of it, but the general gist of it is that it kicks back. So you want to do that. And in recoil, physically, we pull the gun up like this. This is dramatic, but that's what happens. Because of how our body works, we have to catch all that force, and we have to resolve it somehow. And it looks, BA to like hold up the gun like that. And so just a bit of a thing to consider. We want the gun to go straight back, and even if we're doing like, oh shoot, let's see. Is that what it's called? That one, I just didn't know the name. Firearm air low shot. Well, anyways, it's a weird name. So even if we're doing sort of a standard one, this, like weird pose, you want the gun to come back. I do a bit of a drop here. I actually stole this from, I think Devil May Cry is where I saw it in. We drop the gun down a little bit because it's only there for like one frame, and it just makes the impact look even bigger. You could ignore that if you wanted, like in your own stuff. But the important thing is that we go from here, we go back. You know, the point isn't that we're sweeping the gun up, that it's recoiling back. You know, it pivots along our hand, and just how we resolve the shock in our arms and our body. So more like that. And see, the gun seems like slightly out of control, and depending on the character, you may want that. You know, I want that because it's more dramatic, but you know, takes care of it and gets her aim back. And some of the stuff in a vacuum can look maybe not perfect, but in game it looks good. And because this shot is going to loop from this point, there's just little considerations that you might have to consider. Yeah, they always go up on YouTube. Thanks for asking. Oh shoot, there's a lot. I'm sorry. Let's look. We're changing the X to base-centric coordinates. Maybe. I had a question about motion inputs I asked about on Patreon, but didn't quite understand. I am getting to some of those. I had like a bunch of Patreon questions all at once. I believe yours was within that group. If I didn't fully answer it yet, I am getting to it. So sorry about that. A lot of people, yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. If you have any questions, let us know. Again, this will go up on YouTube, youtube.com/Kix42. It's like my old username, but yo. Hey, Matt. Yeah, we put them up on YouTube. Yeah, it's because I missed the beginning of the stream. Just been super busy. Had a couple jobs. Pretty rad. Thank you so much. Hair static always. Yeah. There's just some little concessions I've made. You know, I would like it to flop around, and it wouldn't be that bad to fix, but not a huge deal. Alrighty, take another sip. Chug my water. So gotten so dry here because it is really humid here, and I love it. Moved to Minneapolis, but winter hit. Now everything's dry, and then you have the heat running. You know, makes everything hotter, drier. So I already had a move that sort of got unused because this sort of turned into a more generic skill that like sort of auto targets and stuff. So now this animation that she had before, I want to steal it, and then we will sort of adjust it, and then we'll try and get a little crazy with the blend itself to see how far we can push it, to see if we can make sort of one gesture have a little bit different character based on where she aims in the end. I tried to convey that in those previous animations I showed. They don't quite add up. Because she's in the air, I'm hoping we can do some cooler stuff. But, you know, in the end, it still looks good. I was just hoping that, you know, like some of the ones where she starts like a lot lower and then goes up, I thought that the character would look a little bit better, but it just sort of looks like the other ones. In a good way, you know, it still looks good. It's just... So this is a move where she would sort of thrust the gun like right into their face, and then fire. And the animation doesn't look super good because, well, it may not seem like it looks good here because it would launch her up really high. So it looked better when there was like this really smooth sort of, because she would like put the gun on their face, pull the trigger, and it would launch her like away. But I really, really like this gesture. Like here, it's like she's coming down. She's gonna punch that gun right in their face. So she right there. It looks super sick. Go in like that. And then this pose looks really cool. This is why I'm excited about the aerial ones. Another thing you can do, partly the reason I don't do it is the way I have my characters set up, a lot of times their origin point isn't at the center of their model. But something real easy, if you have a different setup, is you take that same value and you apply it to a full character rotation. And that way, especially like in an aerial attack like this, you could just do this, up is like that. You can imagine how like sick that'll be. Like she's up in the air, doing air combos, and then falls away, pulls a trigger. I get excited just thinking about it. Same thing for up above like this. It's cool because that gesture sort of, it already has different character based on her angle. We're brute forcing it, so we'll probably do a bit of correction, like based on her pose. We'll probably do some correcting like this. Maybe pull some of these feet in, or maybe not. We'll see what we want to do. But that's just another option. It's really easy. I had meant to mention that earlier. But you basically take that same value, and you would just have it. And you could even do like, just have a transform point that you just transform them around. You get away with that. It's just the origin point and like the stuff that I had set up didn't work well with that. Plus, it's fun. Like if you reanimate it each time, it gives a little more character. It looks nicer. But this can be plenty fine. Like it can look super sick because the whole thing, the whole animation still happens. It would just be like this instead. It looks super dope. So let's get to it. I gotta think for a sec. So we are animating, and I might want to. I already know this one's good. I thought maybe it would be a good idea to just use this one. I'm definitely gonna use it, but it'd be nice if we actually went through the steps of like creating an animation, because I want some like over the top ones for when she's in the air, like stuff you'd see in Resonance of Fate. That game, man, it's like Tri-Ace. I don't know. They need someone to direct them. They have like really great ideas. It's just some of their like execution is like. Sorry, I'm gonna go on a rant about Resonance of Fate because it's like I would have liked that game better if it wasn't some weird steampunk like fantasy setting, and I like that. It would have been cooler if it was just like in New York. I don't know. Anyway. Spinning and flipping attacks? Yes, exactly. Are you doing any pose manipulation in the engine too? So, sort of. We're not manipulating the poses. Our poses are hot, no doubt. We are just doing a blend for up and down and mid. So if you look here, just doing a blend like that, it doesn't seem like much. And for such a simple pose, you could get away with just adjusting her torso, maybe a little bit on the arm if you needed to. And that's basically what I do. I just do a full animation for each one, but it's just 3 animations and we blend through it. Here, there's no new animation here. It's a blend between the two. Firing. That going on. And if we did do thing, pose like that, go mid, impose, fire up in the air. So let me go ahead and start with the mid here. Around like that. What I want to do, I want to duplicate this. This part of the video is going to be slow. It's just how animation goes. Might not talk much. Things like that. In Blender, over here and hit 2. I don't understand the user's model for like animations and stuff. Then you hit F. So it saves it. I really don't know. Don't get it. I'm going to call this Sure Shot Air. So we copy this over just so we have this to work with, because we want all this lined up. That's the other thing that was implied, but I didn't say specifically, but this animation has to be lined up. The low one here, high one here. You can have little in-betweens that are a little bit different, but you know, for here, and I mean, I guess depending on the game, like you could have to line up. But I mean, it pretty much has to. It's kind of like when you're doing walk-around cycles. It's like you gotta line them up. You know, blending between walk-around cycles. Name it. Pyramid. And then we want to go back. Mute, because we love this pose. And so we're not necessarily doing this pose, but for reference, I want to copy this one. And generally at the end of my animations, I have like other poses that I paste in, Control V, so I can use them, you know, as I work. Here, you can see this pose sort of just goes right here. In Engine, I just sort of blend back to her aerial state. So we want this. Placing that over there. Oh, cool. Matt says they saw someone doing it for a Metroid fan game. Oh, thanks. Yeah, this was, I mean, I can't hide my influences, right? It looks like Final Fantasy 12 a little bit. And I wasn't trying to make a PS2 looking game. I get that a lot. And I'm not insulted. It's just, I wanted a game where I wanted to could go ham with the textures. Models, can't wait to go back and watch your tours. Oh, thanks. Please message me if you have questions. I don't always, I don't have a lot of like formal training. A lot of it's like self-taught. So there are some things that are like maybe watching other tutorials would teach you, but like stuff for action games and I like to just show things that have worked for me. I guess one reason is because I hate really bad looking things, so at least it'll look good in the end. I'm losing my voice really bad already, I'm sorry. So anyway, let's think for a bit. And if you have some ideas, you can just throw it in there. Oh, I thought I grabbed. It was a 6. Sorry, I'm like bragging. I'm so good, but it looks great. Kind of like that. I had one in mind from a sketch that we might do. But I would like to do like something a little crazier, like upside down. It would, yeah, we should do that. Like Residence of Fate, like I said, it'll look so good. That over here, another reference. So I'm just trying, you know, I'm clicking my references, just making sure I in the right spot. This is the aerial base. This is generally where she is in her air state. And it's pretty. Yeah, it's lined up with that, so we can use this one. So you'll notice on these, we don't have much startup. And this is important in action games. Depending on the move, you can, she's flying right into that state. So wherever she is, we want to blend right into this pose. In other moves, we want more of a startup. Like she's starting from like her neutral fighting position or whatever. Luckily, we can, and honestly, even if you don't have animation blending, this looks great. Like an animation rule, it's not 100%, but if you go from something, you go from one animation to another, if that next animation is smooth, the transition doesn't necessarily have to be smooth. Because generally, I mean, I don't know if you hear a lot of like, your eye has to catch up or whatever, but generally it won't look bad unless like unless it's like choppy. And then there's a difference between something being choppy and quickly transitioning to something. So as long as you make like the follow-up smooth, like you've just jumped to like a new railroad track, you know what I mean? Like you're flying down the minecart shaft in Donkey Kong Country, and you just all of a sudden jump to a new track. The transition was just like clank to the next track, but it's smooth and you're along for that ride already. So it doesn't matter. It looks good. So when you're doing your animation along those lines, you want your startup animation to convey something. This one's kind of smooth, so she doesn't hold this too long. We talked about it a little bit before. We start here, we go into our final gesture here. And when I'm designing attacks, this is usually what I start with. With this particular skill, the startup is really important too. But generally I like to start here. So it's a bit of an exception because in my head, I sort of wanted her to be sort of coming from different positions, even though she's basically just transitioning from the same position just to create more dynamism, given the nature of the attack. I wanted her to start from different positions, but generally I like to start with this gesture. And gesture is like the pose of the character in animation terms, in art terms, basically. Sometimes gesture can mean like, in broader art terms, it can mean the suggested sort of pose of the character. I like to think that gesture is full on, how the character is standing and posing. Yeah, real quick. But yeah, you can always feel free to DM me, man. Sweet, yeah. Pictures are awesome. You're very nice, thanks. It took me a very long time to even get here. This is the first model I made for this game, and it's been updated a lot, and it's still, I want to redo it before the release of the game, but I probably won't. Because whenever I bring that up, my friend Kyan's like, it looks good enough, and I'm like, you're right. So we're gonna stick with good enough. Sorry for all the back and forth. We want to start with that gesture. We're on the air version. Let's say using the air, so let's go ahead. Have our air position here. Drag it over. Oh yeah, that's what I was getting at, is that we don't necessarily want to start from here. I'm sorry, if you don't know, you can right click at the top and you'll grab a whole set of keyframes, and you can hit G to drag it over. G is, in my head, I used it to mean grab. Oh, fair warning, I have not updated to the new Blender, so there are some things that are different. I'm real sorry. I wanted to learn the new one first, but for my next video, but I was actually going to teach too. That's why I was so busy, like I talked about earlier. I had these classes I was going to teach, and then COVID, and ugh. Anyway, right click up here, G to drag. You can do it if you drag or grab into a new layer. It will overwrite the layer you land on. You can also do Shift D, which is what I actually did. Click here, Shift D, drag it over. Well, this is our starting frame. And this is just to get us starting point for the actual animating. This is going to be wacky. Here to here. Hold that pose. I did Shift D again. Go ahead and delete these. We will be going back to reference that because we want the timing to be the same. And so now we got to think of a pose. So if we get real nuts, I mean, we could do like something similar to this because I wanted to do over the top just to show. Yeah, let's just go ahead and switch that over. Don't like that. Already looks kind of cool. 3D is so cool. What we want is ridiculous. We've never played Resonance of Fate. There's a whole lot of this going on. The game, oh, I still have it set to. So if you're not familiar, this is your sort of your pivot point. As you get better at Blender, you'll use 3D cursor. Well, you'll start to use 3D cursor more as your pivot point because you'll get better at manipulating and you know everything where you want it to pivot. The default is median point, which is where everything is, wherever the median between where everything you have selected is. And that works great for most things. Like if there's only one option, that would kind of be okay. But as you get better, you'll switch between these a lot more. And you'll learn the value of the 3D cursor one. So now we're Resonance of Fading it. So go ahead and just paste that in there. Check between these two frames just to make sure her positioning's okay. Because we kind of want gun to be in a similar spot. Let's actually, I don't have any aerial ones. Air shot here. I'm just comparing to make sure some stuff lines up. And it doesn't super have to. In Engine, the bullets spawn at the barrel. There's a bunch of different points that are assigned for every character. Like, their chest and their head and their muzzle and things like that. We may want her to be up higher. Yeah, because like her gun's normally like up here. It doesn't have to be. Probably be a bit higher. And the way I've implemented my character, because of the parenting and IKs and things like that, I have to grab my feet and my hips to sort of move it all. Because the IKs do their own thing for the feet, and that can change a lot. What you have. So funny because I just I moved into this new room. This is actually the computer room, but I was chatting with a friend, and like the only thing in the room right now is like a toy katana because well, in a mirror, because you should get in the mirror and practice your poses when you're trying to design a new move. And so what I do a lot ever since grade school is like sit up all the way on my chair and imagine I'm sort of floating up in the air. Just gives me a sense that I'm like up off the ground. I get on my bed a lot if I have to do a pose like this. I think we can get away without too much of that. But think about maybe make this a little different. We want it different than this. Just thinking. Our R is roll. Regular R is rotate. And rotate will do like this. And our R will roll. And when you're doing rotation posing, you'll do that a lot. You'll do R click, R click, R click. And this is a little helper bone that I have for weapons, the weapon pivot. So it doesn't actually displace anything, and when it exports, it's not even like in it. Well, that's not true. I think it is. It doesn't need to be in it, but it does export. But it's just for posing IKs and stuff. For getting like sweeping motions and stuff while having an IK. I'm buying wasters and they feel like real swords. So what's a waster? Been learning Italian longsword? Heck yeah, that's dope. Royal Skies, cool, look them up. Cool. That's cool. And no, I've been trying to think of, I wanted to design some too. I did that a lot actually when I was younger. I used wood. Not a lot, but I mean, I made a handful of them out of wood. I made a dope katana. It took the longest, like getting the curve and stuff, and it wasn't curved very well, but I think maybe if we're gonna put it right side up because I'm getting mind flooded. I can't head around. Did I not grab? Oh lord. You can also, you shift right click to select. You can shift left click in the hierarchy here to grab it all too. So we are going to be upside down, but I can't really visualize what I want when she's upside down. So maybe like, oh man, now I'm getting tons of ideas. I feel a little guilty though, because a lot of them are like, that was in Resonance of Fate. We could do, if you have an idea, like if there's something you think might look kind of cool, let me know. I'm thinking like one of these, sort of like this. Oh god, that looks sick. Like already, it's like, yo. You don't get pumped for your art. Like, what are you doing? Even that is dope. Like, oh my god, I love art. And from there, like once you have a cool gesture, it's like, maybe like really like pushing it over the top is what you want. Or something like that. Or like maybe you want more of like that arch, like this is just what more I had in mind, like that. And when you're doing aerial attacks, it's important to sort of find a way. So martial arts, your feet and your hips and your core are like where all the power comes from. Your arms and things like that, in the case of like a punch, are more like your barrel. But the gunpowder is in your feet, in your hips, your core. And pretty much any attack, it starts with the feet. You have to get your feet in position in order for your body to be able to rotate the way you want it. And in a lot of like aerial attacks, you don't have the ground, but it's still important to make a sort of convincing. I mean, you don't have to, but sort of take it to the next level. Sorry, this looks so good. It's important to consider that, like, sort of not fake a ground, but find a way for the ground to be there in a sort of stabilizing sense. Swords are dope. Swords are dope. I'm looking at those wasters or whatever. That's sick. I had no idea. And I've looked that up before. I failed braking in college. I failed so many classes in college. Yeah, I've only ever worked in Blender, sorry. Keep up the good chats. Ready, like, this is sick. And it's like, with the aerial ones, it's just endless. Like, because in my head, I'm thinking more like this. But already, this is dope. Or if you like, you know, be back up there, like you're doing like a cool hop, or even like back in front here. A little bit more boring, but it has its, you know, qualities. That not quite as cool. You don't hit I to insert your keyframes. There's other ways you can do it, but anyway, what I was getting at in my head, I was thinking maybe more like this. I don't know. Like it as much. We're gonna mess with it for a thinking I want to rotate the body a bit. Oh. Hmm. That, yeah, I mean, that could be cool too. The thing with these aerial ones, it's almost like every pose you could do, you could face them in any direction too. And like, and if you're making like a gun-based game, then for sure, like doing something more dynamic where like you rotate the body in like random directions and then just correct like the sick. Thinking like a twist. Art has infinite possibilities, but then it's like, which one do you pick? Whatever that quote is. This one's like a little bit too extra. If it was a move that was like 4, like shooting backwards or something. I like this one. Just like this is cool. You just need to take it to the next level. Push that gesture somehow. Push the idea of it, push the motion of it. So that's, you know, where the next level of your like sort of brainstorming will be. Like, you know, there's something cool about that. This game has a sort of grittiness to it. So rather than having something like this that's more like controlled, you know, this is if like the girl in Residence of Fate did something. This is if like, you know, the goofball did. And that's what more Kate's more like. Where things are a little bit clumsy. Poses aren't quite you'd want for like martial arts and things like that. I hate to ever say there's like limits on, because I hate this advice too, but I'm still gonna say it. You know, I have a fairly rich background in martial arts and dance, and it just helps so much. Like, I'm not saying you have to do that, but it really helps. So sick. So here's where I'm at. Trying to, you know, where does she start and where's the rotation? Like, is she sort of like starting from here? Even that's dope. God dang it. You know, she came from under like this and went boom. For a pose like that, I would. This looks too skydivey. I would probably do something a little different. Sorry, I am all over the place. This is what art is like, dudes. Get used to it. So a future video on how to make AI attack using. Yeah, we're gonna. AI was one that I've been meaning to do, and then I got busy. So it might not necessarily be the exact next video. I'm actually gonna sort of overhaul how we handle like the core data stuff. It's actually what I do in my game right now. And when I made the tutorial videos, I did it a different way because I thought it was better. And I even say that in the video, hey, I'm going to switch over to this new way in my game. And I didn't because in the end, the way I have it in my game right now, my personal project, is way better. It has to do with scriptable objects. There's been like a few videos like going around Twitter, and some of them are a little bit old, just about the power of those. And I knew it, but like seeing those videos, just like there's a better way. It's gonna be way better set up. It's gonna help us in the future and just it's more understandable. It's like a mix of it's like the power of scripting, but also just the power of like drag and drop type things and just being able to reference variables as you can have variables as references. If you're not super familiar with programming, it might not make sense, but it's really good. And then we're going to get to AI. That'll be the very next video. So after that one, because that was something that was supposed to have done. I mean, I don't want to say it like a year ago, maybe. So here, it may not make that looks cool. I don't know. Is that which one's better? That or that? Welcome to art. And depending on that, this is another thing we could do. Like depending on, because after this we have to do the up and down of it. This is just I haven't barely gotten started. Maybe the mid's here, but maybe the up is more like this. I'm saying like she aims up. Even then, I'd probably want her to like fall down into it more. This is gonna be so sick. Like I knew this was dope. I've been excited to do it, but like. Oops, I ended it. I like this a little more. Another good rule of thumb is, you know, a little bit exaggerated is better. More contrast is better. So if you're trying to decide between two things, you know, keep that in mind. Yeah, that looks so dope. But now, what's the actual motion? You know, like an easy way is like gonna be here generally. So that's a little bit of a bug. You'll just run into that sort of things in animation. You know, I call it a bug, but it's a feature. It's just not doing what we want it to do right now. So based on the negative or positive values of your rotation, it will rotate the other way. Because generally, like, you know, if we're blending between rotations, it's gonna take like the shortest path. But we don't always want that. So being able to just do the inverse of it lets us go the other way. And it's really powerful. But there's times where it doesn't know what you want. You just have to go in. And people with better Blender experience probably know better solutions to that. Like I never use my curves. A lot of people animate like with curves like all the time. I can't. It's not that I don't understand it. I even like think in these terms, but I just find it easier to use this stuff. So anyway, now that we fixed that, we'll rotate the right way. And so what I do is just like click in there, Yeah, left negative tab, left negative tab, negative tab. And if there's two negatives, it'll make it positive, luckily. Hit enter, hit I, and we're back to the buggy one. So we'll go ahead and undo that. Even that's sick. Like this pose in the middle here, like, goodness gracious, that's cool. I love art. It's like I want to steal that one. That's so dope. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and copy that and save that reference for later. Yeah, I'm real excited for these ones because like when they aim up and down, we can change the gesture a lot because our feet don't have to be on the ground. Again, like if you're watching on YouTube, this is gonna be a really long part of the video. I'm probably gonna take a break and get a snack and come back and screen chat here. I don't know why people don't. I say this like in every video. It's like if you don't pop off when you're making your art, I don't understand. I add. Not easy. Dude, and now I'm like seeing this new pose, and it's like a mix of those two. Oh, I could faint. That looks so sick. You know, I have this foot like coming down. Like this is Bayonetta right here. Like, oh man. Oh my god. Okay, we have that for later. So if you want to use that one, because the idea of this one is sort of like a, you know, dolphin flip, for lack of a better term. That's why in my head it was like maybe more like this. That's like too dolphiny, and it's like not cool. There's no style to that. It's already pretty good. I'm just sort of one last check. I'm wondering if I want her body to face like a little bit more, just to see. A little weird. We could get away with that in a different, something similar. Yeah, see now it's like, yeah, that could be cool. Like, sorry. Like she keeps her body straight, but then is like aiming the gun around the front still. Oh my god, that's cool. Little sense yet, but looked better before. I think get the idea. It's like, you know, on one hand we have something like this, where you know our body is like totally facing it, but it can look really cool when you move. Don't necessarily do that. Like she is sort of pointing her shoulder a little bit, but when you come around, sort of keep your body squared up and look really cool too. And it's like that cowboy one I talked about earlier, like Ron Swanson. It's like, you know, your lead shoulder maybe is in front instead, and you're kind of shooting from the hip or like under your arm. Anyway, that's what I'm getting at. How do we pick between? That one is so tight. Probably do both of them. I don't know, because it's like if it's so similar, because we want each one to be different. You don't want like granular changes. What about this one? I actually am kind of dying and need to go to the restroom, so I will be back. I don't know how you pause the stream. Isn't there a new way to do that? Yeah, I know. It's fun. Never had a bot. Well, I think maybe I had a couple bots. Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's really cool if you're just look at these like there's one video called like the scriptable object revolution. I'm gonna go over it in the next video, but and then there's some other scriptable object one that'll probably come up if you search that. It's a little newer. It's just it's just great. They're just the best thing about Unity. Like Unity has a lot of amazing things with scriptable objects. They're just so powerful. It's what we use for core data in those tutorials. But this sort of like takes it to the next level. I'm thinking part of the gesture of this is sort of like arching over your shoulders. So a little more here. It looks better. Some quality both of them. Eliminate the clipping. Her collar is such a pain because of that. That's okay. Size the gesture that way. So I'm pulling the arm back. On some of the angles, it just looks hella tight. That looks better. Okay, that's good. I'm still wondering, like, what is the pose? So let's. Here's what I do. I do Shift D, and I do like one pose over, or I leave a couple steps here. Another thing I do is I try to limit my even though I have the others out here, these are just references. The animation, we're gonna crop it at 60. There have been exceptions where I need to go to like 120. And in some instances, some characters, I'll keep it at 30. And the reason is having this granularity just helps you make decisions better. It's like you don't nitpick with certain things. It's like it has to be on this frame because that's the only real option without it looking like garbage. And I just find it helpful for, games take a very long time and we need to reduce the time it takes where we can. So. You remember that bathroom break I talked about? All right, I will see you in a sec. Thank you for waiting, everyone. If I, a lot of, it can be hard for me to catch all the questions. If it's been a few minutes, just feel free to ask it again. Sorry, it took so long. I had to get a 7-layer bar. You know how it is, don't you? They're so good. If you've never made 7-layer bars, you should learn because it's not real baking and they're super delicious. What I mean by that is that they're very easy. They're extremely good. I mean, they're like 7 cookies. That's why they're so good. They're disgusting. Like, that's a little too gentle from that pose, from that angle. What I mean by gentle, it just sort of looks like she's sort of just laying out. Right here, it's like extreme, right? And you can't always fulfill every angle. But you want to try and consider all of them. It's also important to check in ortho, unless your game is non, what is it, perspective. See, all these other poses look pretty good. Pose, I don't know, maybe elbow, like where it was, is better. I think that's better. Just like the way she lays it out here isn't quite right. Bends way out there. Looks a little better. It still just seems like she's laying it out there. I was trying to like, I want her to feel like she's reaching more. Even if it's not like what you would do, really. Like, obviously wouldn't be flying around like this either. So, sorry, I'm losing my voice so bad. Problem again is that she'll have to look over her shoulder and just her collar like flipped. Like it's night and day when you like correct the character's face. Like this whole gesture can look dope, and you don't really like. Haven't done their face yet, and it's like, yeah, it's okay. It did look better. There, especially when it's so sick. We'll save this old one as we work. Generally, if you feel like the change need to be made, because a lot of times when you're working on art, you're working on instinct. You're not like super considering every decision. Generally, your instincts are right. Take that next step and say, hey, this needs to be, feel this way. Usually right. But it does not hurt to save backups. Flipping. Most people won't see it, but I try to eliminate it where I can. You make 7 layers for Christmas? Heck yeah. We bake a lot, so like I'm usually baking stuff. I just made zucchini cake. And that was gone in like 2 days, and it's just me and my mom, but it's so good. And last night she made pumpkin bread, chocolate chip pumpkin bread, and 7-layer bars. A little extra. How do you make the outlines in your characters? It's Unity. It's a shader. If you check any of my videos, it might not have that. I do have it. I think an old video. I can send it to you, but it's just a shader. Do you have any idea what might cause random texture stretching in specific areas when exporting from Blender to Substance? I don't know. I don't use Substance Painter. I'm so sorry. I'm sure that's a fixable issue. That just sounds like something weird going on. Like nothing like fundamentally wrong with like that sort of work pipeline, if you know what I mean. Just that something weird happening. I'm higher. I'm just checking the heights here. Not actually. Ooh, we got an eye insert on this. Doing some little corrections, but I'm also still thinking about how I want her to get into this pose. I don't love that. I got a little too weird up there. I might just go back to the old one. Again, that's why we keep the old one. Sometimes it is wrong. I'm really loving this one though. Maybe we should just go for that one. That one's looking cool though. It's I got a little too like wild with the sort of exaggerating like her looking over her shoulder. You look good in that one area, but all right. So how might she get into this pose? You can think, we can start by just grabbing everything and maybe she starts from back here, rotates over, like that. Gets a lateral spin again because she's in the air. Like, I mean, even that would look. For that pose, I might like come from this way. Not quite right. In my head, it was something a little crazier like that. That's kind of what the motion of her body's doing. But like I said, because she's in the air, she could really just start from anywhere and it would look sick. Because she wouldn't necessarily be in this gesture. It'd be in a gesture that makes sense, but we'll see how. May not be right. This isn't perfect yet, but if we for something dramatic, but it might be that we just want something straightforward. would be awesome. Thanks. Not sure what quite you meant, but maybe just the different poses and stuff you're talking about. So, sort of thinking like maybe it's more like she's sort of jumping from the side here. She's sort of moving this way. Inverse of that pose. I think the gun we could. Clear transform. I can't remember what it is. Clear pose transforms. In Blender, you can hit spacebar and just type in something you might want. That's also nice because if you do that and then just hit spacebar again, the last one you did will be there. This might not quite be right, but what I'm going for, right? Like that's almost like that one's so sick. Not as exciting, but I think we could sort of get it there. Holds it 5 frames. Oh, I have that one in there. One thing we could try is like exaggerating that more. Was that lateral movement okay? It's a little strange. Maybe her head shouldn't move so much. Maybe she should sort of stay there, but like her core is like in that same spot. Oh, okay, yeah, there's so many changes. Like they're saying that the shortcut's different in the new versions, which is good for a lot of things, unfortunately, of Blender. Knee pulls. Quite makes sense that she would be here. And then end up like this pose is cool, but like how do we get there? I think I thought of one. So let's start over here. Instead of that, let's go like important thing to set up when you're doing animation is to consider what your final pose is like and what your sort of motion is. Like if you're throwing a punch, like the basic way to think of it is that, or even like attacking with the sword in a dramatic fashion, like working with blades and stuff is like a little bit different in real martial arts, because you don't necessarily need that kind of power behind it. You're just trying to create a cutting edge, not necessarily create an impact. what I'm getting at is that, like in boxing, if you want to, you don't just move your arms, you kind of move your whole core into position and then wind up and then rotate into it. So if we're rotating into it like that, I want to set up our torso so this is looking pretty good, I think. We could try like that or something. That's not bad. I think this could do sort of a full rotation here. See, that starting pose is pretty cool. I think we're getting there. Oops. That's almost there. That's cool. That's pretty sick. Ooh, I love art. I think we want her hand to be a little bit in front to show that she's sort of throwing her, her opposing hand back to help with the spin. It's hard though, because this looks sick. Kind of don't want to lose that, but hopefully it'll show up still. Yeah, that's better. So now I'm torn. It's like, should we taut? Or should she keep it outstretched? Like right here. Sort of like punch it out. It can look really tight. Outstretched is really cool. It's looking pretty sick. That angle a little bit. No, we'll come back to this idea. There's something there we need to correct, but maybe just keep it so it's not popping. So popping is like when you have IKs and it's called knee popping and elbow popping, where it's like you hit that maximum. Like the difference between a tiny bit of bend and the maximum is like, it's just like visually it always like creates like a pop because of how it's calculated, and just some other things were like, because the IK is like slightly out of range, and so even though it clamps at the straight line, the IK might be stretched out a little bit farther, so that creates a period in the animation where it stays straight for maybe a few frames and it looks bad. UVs were whack to begin with. Yeah, that can happen. Glad you got it figured out. That's almost there. What is lacking? And for sure, we want to push this more. Oh, in general, it depends on how you set up your poses or your bones, your rig. But at the very least, do some sort of normalization after you have all your bones set up. This is a separate rigging advice, but normalize them all consistently. So that way you can do, for me, it's rotate YY. We'll do it along one of the normals, which is along the along the bone. RXX is sort of like up and down, like if you're bending forward or backward. And then rotate ZZ is like if you were rotating sideways. And it's relative to the bone, it does along the normal, so that way you can always get rotations that are along those. Particularly useful for these. Useful for everything, but it's being a little bit weird, we'll have to correct that. That's pretty cool. Maybe like I mean, that looks cool. Cause I'm thinking like maybe if she held the gun a little bit different, because like that's cool, Sick. I hate guns in real life, but they're so cool in the fantasy setting. How do you pick? It's so cool, all the different poses. Like if this was like a game with customization, it's like, how do you hold your gun? Trying to see like what the pose might look like. Want it through like this. Oops. I think the way we have it is best. Check out like I'm gonna make a whole backup copy of this because I'm gonna start making some big changes. Just in case. Again, you hit 2 and then F, and that makes a duplicate. I don't know what it actually means, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, I honestly have mixed feelings too. I want this to get, I am a, it's, sorry, I don't know how to phrase this, but I have mixed feelings. Let's just say that as well. But I'd rather not be the topic here, I guess is what I'm getting at, even though it's an important one. Not that you can't talk about it in chat. I just meant for me. Sorry. You want to. Express yourself in that regards. Okay. Been stuck here a while. I'm just not quite sure. Not quite right. Like maybe. This way. This. This. I don't have any great rules on for doing like head poses, but it's important that you do sort of pose the neck and the head. Some difficult poses that were hard for me to overcome is that I wasn't like sort of bending the neck over enough, especially like looking at Devil May Cry and some of their stuff. For Nero, how he's like slumped over like really hard, like with his attacks. Slump was not a very action uh, inspiring term, but he's like bent over and making sure you get the neck right is important. I wonder a lot of things. That looks cool. Like, actually looks very cool. That's good. Seeing that pose, it's almost like, I don't know, maybe not. That's looking pretty good. Maybe she should march over here. That's what I was trying to get to. That's pretty tight, I think. I do think she should maybe. Two minds. One is this thing we talked about here that maybe she should bend her elbow a little bit. It might look cooler. That's so cool. Sorry. It's really cool. Slump gang. Just stay more slumped, towards us. Maybe she should start more like this. Here. Again, exaggerate. Especially with blending. She's never, in my game in particular, she'll never really be fully in that pose, but. And we'll correct those feet. That looks sick. I do think she should lean back even more, though. That might have been a little bit too much. It looks good, but. That's cool though. That sometimes when you like go too far and you realize it, then you're in a good spot because it just means you have some little adjustments. Yeah, there's something about her being a little more upright, just makes that pose look cooler. I'm so torn. It looks so dope when she holds it like straight out, but I also know it would look dope the other way. I don't know. You want it to lag behind a little bit. That's another important thing to remember in general when you're animating. Sort of attacks or martial arts based things is like, it starts with your feet and your core, and it means that your limbs and stuff will sort of lag behind. You don't want them to lag too much, but especially in like a startup like this, you want to make it more dramatic. Like having it lag behind a lot creates some nice timing and like anticipation. Like it looks so extreme, like she's throwing her body into it, and like you have the punch all loaded up, and like it looks so sick. What you don't want to do is for your limb to beat your core. So if you're doing animation with a gun, it's way different because you might want your your pose, like you're aiming to get in a position, so it's a lot different. But with like a punch, you throw your punch lands, and then the rest of your core like follows through. Not with like a big like hooking punch, but like in just like your gesture, it's gonna look hideous. That's tight, dudes. We're making a cool game. Yeah, I'm into it now. I like that. Because a lot of times I wouldn't have her arms straight, but it just looks so sick there. Maybe a little looks better. Because there's something dope about like outstretching the arm. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, can you see it? Like, golly. Like, it's dope keeping it outstretched already. But when it gets bent right here, and you like outstretch the gun, it's like time is up, dude. Yeah, that's cool. I'm trying to make this hand get in a position earlier. That same thing. Again, you can do it with curves, but I'm bad with doing the curves. We're basically making our own curves, but with frames. Making it get in a position faster. Like, throws her hand back. Then it still has some like follow through, but didn't quite do what I wanted. Fortunately, we might need to like really exaggerate it, but then we get into some trouble where like, because these IKs rotate with the body, sometimes depending on your setup, you may not like that. I like it. I like it being parented to the body. But getting some weird jitter once the end there, unfortunately. Maybe a little too much. Good thought, but animation is cool. Where do I sign up? Well, download Blender. If you ever need help, just let me know. Those are starting to really inspire me. Give me some ideas for 2D art I could try. I love gesture. Sorry, I mean a 7-layer bar. I mean, games can be anything, you know? For me, you know, why? It's not why I love games, but why I make the games I like to make. You know, I've always had an interest in martial arts and things. And you don't need those interests necessarily. But human body is beautiful. I will say, the human body is the foundation of all art. So studying the human body is really important. And light. You could say light is too, but yeah, practice poses, look at other games, just download a model and start doing weird poses. I love just sketching out gestures. Poses are sick. But again, like having the background in dance and martial arts is, you know how you can break the rules. Because like you'll see some things like, I don't know, Street Fighter V has a lot of really bad animations like that, where they try to make the animation look unique, like characters like ducking punches and stuff. And Street Fighter is a goofy game, but a lot of them just sort of lack power. You can have a weird looking move that still has power and style. Anyway, only done interpolated walk cycles. Cool. All right, so that is maybe even good enough. We want to get out here. holds that pose for a bit. And if we look at the old example, basically in that pose, but we make the gun kick back, straight back, the direction of the opposite direction of the velocity. Equal and opposite force. Let me push your hip back a little bit, and then depending on the pose, we'll sort of move it in different directions. And then, she recoils with the gun and sort of regains her footing to where she was standing. It's like when you get pushed and you sort of, you kind of go with the flow, but then you go back to where you were. And then we do a really lazy blend back into her standing animation. We will adjust that in different ways. So here, back, right into her chest like this. And then frames later, pull it up like this. Then everything else is blended out. There's not much else fancy going. Same thing, just copy this. And we should actually line this up a little bit better. And it's just a little bit more lined up. Just for mechanics' sakes. We at least want to do that. For in-game stuff. Again, it can get corrected, but we should at least, her gun shouldn't be like this, and she's firing the bullet out like that, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, the gun kick in like this. You kind of have to decide, like, how the gun's gonna kick, like, how your body's gonna rotate. So, like, oh, that's what I'm on. Oh my gosh. It's just a little easier to see on this simple example. You can kind of do it two ways. And this is where, like, maybe realistically it doesn't quite do this. But what I do is I rotate kind of almost no matter where she's aiming. I rotate towards the back of the shoulder that's holding the firearm. So that means from here, it's going to rotate this way. It's very minor, but it adds a lot to the, even though if she's like holding her arm straight out like this, you don't necessarily want it to, I mean, you can't really predict where it might rotate. Well, you can, because the recoil has to do with like the body's mechanisms too, not just like the force of the pistol, like kicking back. Because you can kind of get away with it, like it went this way instead. Boom, like that. Just doesn't quite work. And even though that was a bad example, it can work. But I like to go always to the back of the shoulder that's holding the firearm. We'll do a little bit of that too. That means even though like you might think that maybe she should rotate sort of like this, it's more about how the body sort of is like getting struck by it, not just, it's hard to say. And you might get away with something else. I like to do this. And then we want that gun to line up as best we can afterward. Slide the body back a little bit. Keep the feet in place a little bit because she is aerial, so this will kind of like drag behind, but we will sort of a little bit. Basically do this, and honestly, because these are all parented, we could like cheat a little bit here. Too extreme. It looks cool right there though. Under other circumstances, it would look better. And where's your elbow, sister? That's probably too much. So now what we want to do is sort of get a little bit of like a neutral blend that we can sort of rotate back to. What I'm doing here is I'm copying those old hips and dragging it back because we want that sort of, want it to kick a little bit, you know what I mean? We don't want it to just go back and then stay there and blend softly. We kind of kick. We'll fix that gun up there. Yeah, looks and get it a bit. Make the barrel a bit. That's gonna need it. Please, I beg of you. Oh my gosh. We may find that putting too many like different sort of rotations compared to like the initial kick looks bad, and so we might have to stick with it being like this instead of like this, but we'll see. Yeah, not quite right. Thinking I would love for it to go across her body. More like this. And that looks cool too, but and in this particular case, she sort of recovers. Like if you do like a regular shot, she has this bit of startup, like this, pulls the gun out. But once you're in this pose, you know, you can fire rapidly. It's only like a few frames, but it feels good. It's in the game and it looks really good. But from those like bigger dynamic shots, you can also go right into this. You don't necessarily go into this startup. And that's just a long-winded way of saying that we want that pose. Oh, we had it referenced over there. Never mind. Huh. We could have just grabbed it from there. So I have it on. So we'll just practice it. We might want something a little bit different, but I make some adjustments still. Some poses it like some angles it looks so good though. You can see like during the kick, some of the angles it doesn't show up very well. You might want to cheat your torso move a little bit. I call it cheating because it's just not quite what you would experience, but it looks good, can look good. I don't know, I don't like it. And it's a little slow this timing, but in the game it's played back at a much faster pace. Like it could be a little bit more dynamic, but it looks good. I mean, that's pretty dope. You do skateboard tricks using the recoil to power your ollie. You could. No skating in this game. There was golf in this game. And I was like super crazy and it wasn't just an action game. Changes a lot. Which is good. I mean, the original idea was cool. I was going to do a video, or I intend to do a video on the development of this game. Because it had a lot of problems. Try one thing real quick. Really exaggerate this. Might look terrible, but it might look sick. Getting into Resonance of Fate territory. It's hard to say. I don't like this part. Kind of interpolating weird. Or to like. Say more like this. Like it quite as much. There's something about more exaggeration though. I would have to make some correct. Because there's something nice about not having it too exaggerated, because we only have this much time to get to this pose. And so, you know, I mentioned that more exaggeration is good, but you also want people to be able to take in your pose. So in this short amount of time, she has to rotate more, and maybe that's cool. But you need people to be able to see this pose. You want to see this gesture and this startup and like the anticipation of this. And if they're spinning a lot, you lose a lot of that. That in mind. I like this. Could use some work, but I think we can stick with that. So now I can get a little. Go ahead and save that. I don't think I've saved yet. Duplicate that. And change the mid to low. Do a gesture for the low. See that she like moves past like what like a low aiming position might be. So we need to rectify that somehow. Maybe she stops early, or maybe gets into a slightly different pose, but that's what we're here to discover. So first thought would be just to correct it in a rudimentary way. Honestly, it's looking pretty good. You do little accents like this to help with that. Better than I thought. I was worried that this would be kind of whack, but and because we're in the air, a little bit of like everything rotation to the finish line. Problem though is that we generally get there starting from the same way. Not a huge deal if it's not. Sorry, like went in and out of consciousness there. Poses, I guess. Huh, big mistake. I have to insert my poses. And delete, Shift D, duplicate, pull it out 2 frames. Excuse me. Pull out 2 frames. We're just trying to line this up with the other poses as best we can. The green. And redo that. So her arm is lagging back a bunch. She's not rotating as much as she would normally would because she's kind of stopping it, pointing down. So we just got to lag. Let's see other problems. That trajectory should be more like this. Why is it so different? Strange. Getting some like rotational speed, like competing. The way she gets into this pose and the way this. So this spot compared to when the rest of her body gets there. It's weird because it's like barely any different. That's weird. Gotta think for a sec. Go to here. Angle make that kick. Up a little. Too bad. So you can see, I kept saying it's like brute forcing, but we're we're just following a template, so it's not too bad. And it ends up looking. Now I'm really missing how she close to her body like this. And that part's still not ideal. There's so much rotation, but if I, correct it, then in these interpolations, it's actually out forward more, and it just looks kind of... Would be that bad during gameplay, but... mentioned before, like if you wanted to get a little crazier with it, especially because you're basically making the animation for each angle, rather than like following it so closely, because she's aiming differently, you may want to, and because she's in the air, a little crazier with it if you wanted. Like that or something. A different gesture, I might do it. This one I like. I want the startup different. I mean, because you could get pretty crazy with it because you are blending with it, and it blends throughout the whole animation. You could make it almost different if they were similar in pose and exact in timing. It would look good, even if they were sort of pretty dissimilar. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that what's cool about this is that this implementation is that the aiming happens at real time and like constantly. So like if you did something like really over the top, like a moonsault, like over a character or something, and you're just like firing sort of wildly, like you could keep them aiming depending on where the enemy is, and it would just look really sick. That I do, it's all weird. Maybe she should jump her gun a little bit. Better. Even now, I'm like, if she's sort of shooting like straight down like that, it might suit us to like this rotation be a little bit. We'll fix it down there. It seems minor, but it's more like she's like, I don't know. It emphasizes like that downward motion better. It looks cool. You could take that to the next level. You really want to extend. Let me know if you have any questions. You've been live. You basically do the same thing for upward shot. I like to start with the mid one. Tempted to like not go over the high one and just implement it, but it would be cool if we showed all of them and then implement it into the. Delete all. Not a huge deal. We crop it, but it's just extra data. It's just like data chaff. I think there's a proper term for that. Now, this one just might lend itself to looking better. Straight up anyway. Problem with the animations I've done so far, so this is an implementation problem, but an art failure, is the upward ones all kind of look similar. To like a bit. I think it would suit it to I don't want to mess with it too much. I said earlier, you could make it be pretty dissimilar, but just run into issues with your blend. Yeah. Test your blend. Grabbing that pose. Placing it in there. I don't know, that looks pretty good. The problem I was worried about is like when you do these mid ones, you can get some weird stuff where this is like quite right. Fine. Think that. A bit. Is it? Here. Straight up as much as we can. This is a little weird. Just Make her look down a little bit. Gonna help. Arms getting tight. Looks pretty sick. Hmm. Going back and forth on that. Here, I want it like the old one where. Excuse me. That. I don't know. On this one, I'm like torn. I really like it. Like, because she's like pointing it straight up, it's like that. A little bit. Not perfect, but I don't know. Something's just telling me that looks better. A lot of times folks just leave streams on in the background, so if you don't have questions, that's cool. But if you do have questions, I haven't seen the stream update at all. Ugh. Can you go to like over the top particular pose? I do think we made a good pose. Oops. We'll do the kick. Here you can see how the chest would rotate more, like in the way I've been talking about. Ben's doing a little bit. Had it before. I'm like, now I hate it. Or is this what I changed it to? Did I not? I don't know. Looks a lot better. Animations. Stick on the gun. I'm not sure. Soften that. It's a little bit better, but not yet. Ugh, that's a little weird. I don't know why that's being so weird. Something later. So now let's wait a million years while Unity updates. Call, been listening otherwise. Cool. If there are questions, let me know. Unity. So we're just waiting for Unity to load. This is one thing I wish I could do better. When you start adding a lot of animations, it takes a long time for Unity to update the blend file. Then we have to go in and actually set our animations, then you have to wait on that. Take your time, Unity, it's fine. And generally in Unity, to go in, animation tab, click the model, go to the animation tab. Three new ones, 1, 2. There's a faster way to scroll here. Please let me know. Let's see. Same thing like I mentioned, we gotta wait for it. We're almost ready to see it in game though. It seems extra long than normal. I mean that One file does have a lot of animations, but how's your day going? I'm worried that it was a little bit better and it's really similar to the other one. I don't know, it's a little different. I think this one's bright even more than the other one. Just filling time until that was done loading. Now, make a new skill for it. And this is game specific, so this isn't just go and do in your. And down the line, I'm gonna make this like one skill and everything, but in our animator controller, create a state, new blend tree, capture shot here. Speed is my base. Animator controller speed variable. That would be one that you set up yourself. 1D parameter is a 2. Bleed 0 is low. Shot. What is there? Pretty dope. Pretty sick. The blend, midpoints, make sure. Yeah, that looks dope. It holds a pistol a little bit different. That's what's so cool about the blending. It's like you can kind of get different character. That's so cool. One. This matches with that name. We're gonna cheat. Normally that's a context attack. Air only. Highest priority. Let's shoot some ghosts. Just work right away. She's not doing the right move. Let's have higher priority. It should work. No, maybe because it. Help. Needs to be work. It might, because we'll get there. Oh. Again, this is like game specific. Why though? Doesn't matter. Oh my gosh. Oh my god, it looks so good. I wish we had a ton of them. I don't know why it's not working. Again, that's a me problem, not a. For now, so that we shall just repeat that one move over and over. We're doing the same pose, but pretty sick. Well, that about concludes it. Thank y'all for joining me for a longer stream. Again, if you're on YouTube, the idea is that you don't have to watch this part. That the gist of it was explained earlier on. Recap some other stuff. Been really busy, still working on the game, also contracting for a company. I'm excited to get back to making videos. We're gonna get back to the character action tutorial. We're gonna do a video on fixing up our data and how to control that data better. And then we'll get into some enemy AI stuff, and then kind of overhaul everything a little bit. I've talked about that before, but like we're really gonna do it this time. And yeah, thank y'all so much. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter at Culture Attack, or if you'd like to support these videos, go to patreon.com/Culture Attack. Despite my absence, everyone's support has been amazing. Like, truly, thank you. It's been such a big help. I really appreciate it. Yeah, that about does it. Usually I like to end on what we're working on here. Cool animation blend. Face the target, and then do a blend for our final X aim position. Good. And it's pretty easy to implement. I know the animation took a little while, but the brute force part isn't really that hard. We just gotta do some extra steps there. Yeah. Thanks again. I love y'all very much, and I'll catch you later.